Being Human with Chris Walker, a podcast about just that, being human. How can we work to be the human that we really want to be versus the human being that we think we're supposed to be? On this episode, we are going to talk about self-expression, finding our voice, speaking our truth versus saying whatever the fuck we want to and being an asshole. Not always being an asshole, but it can come off that way. I don't like to be negative, but I'm going to start on kind of a negative rant. As I look at the world that we live in, like people have somehow found the entitlement to say whatever they want, whenever they want, wherever they want it. And it is triggering, and it kind of sucks to like have to be in environments where that's there. And guess what? One of those environments is the fucking internet. It's just everywhere. But I am desperately trying to come back to my favorite line, which is people are doing the best they can with what they have in the moment. I'm like, no, you are not doing your best. You are full of shit. What the fuck are you thinking? That's coming up so much in me. But I do believe that because at our core, we want to feel safe. And one of the things that allows us to feel safe is to feel seen. If we think about it, here's an analogy that I have: safety and seen. I used to ride my bike around London, the little Boris bikes, like the little city bikes, and I never had a helmet because no one has a helmet. You just pick them up and you go. And drivers suck, and drivers can do a lot of dumb shit all the time. But I used to think to myself, anytime I'd come to an intersection, I was like, I know that I cannot 100% unconditionally trust this person on their bike, but if I make eye contact with them, they can't hit me. You can't see someone on a bike and then hit that person on a bike. It's always when you're unseen, whatever they're distracted by, that's when an accident happens. So that comes rewinding. So there is a yearningness for us to feel seen. And sometimes when we aren't seen for a little to all of our life, there is even more of this burst of energy that says, see me and hear me. My body will feel relaxed. My heart will feel relaxed if I can be seen and heard for what I think is my truth. And that is in part correct. I guess it's fully correct for those people that are subscribing to that and saying whatever the hell they want to. But at least it does give me a little bit of compassion. And then I realize like I'm in control of my environment. So stop watching the shit that fucking triggers you, Chris. That's what comes to my head. But when it comes to what we call as speaking our truth, i.e. people saying whatever it is they want to, I don't know if people actually know their truth and know how to find the truth and then express their truth. And what I think is often coming up is why people sound like assholes is because they're grasping at straws. I always wanted to be famous. Like that was a huge thing for me. I shouldn't say a huge thing. It was it was like a dream for a while. I wanted to be like a famous actor back when I was like 12 or 13 years old. And I just thought like, oh, being on the big screen. I used to act in plays when I was in middle school. I was actually the second male lead in The Music Man. And the only reason I wasn't the lead is because I was the only one that could play the old mayor because I had a deep voice. I was like, no, I want to be the Music Man. Michael Bremser, you should not be the Music Man. But he was, and I was the mayor, and it all worked out. I was also Mr. Vandergelder in Hello Dolly, the Walter Matthau character as like a 11-year-old. My deep voice that I have now was also a deep voice when I was 11. But I wanted to be fame, to be known, to be popular. And that was because I actually realize now I enjoy acting. Like I enjoyed the hell out of it. And I had to go down the path of get good grades and do sports. But when I think about it, there was the yearningness to be famous. If you're famous, all famous people are popular. And I always had that childhood wound of like, I'm not cool enough to inherently be popular. I have to try for people to like me. I'm not enough. I'm not cool enough. So that was always my story. So that idea of, oh, if I'm famous, everyone wants to be your friend. So I get that we live in this world that we can now, channels to express to everybody. But then the question is, it comes back to why? What is your intention? And if the intention is just to talk and be heard and do anything to allow more people to click on the thing to hear you, you're just performing. But when we think about expression, and then to express ourselves through our voice starts with connection. We have to connect to who we are, to what we feel, and to then be able to share that from a place of wisdom. We live in a world right now, a lot of data, and there's a lot of knowledgeable people. There's people that are reading one self-development book a week, listening to about 10 hours of podcasts per week. You might be in that bucket. And it is, so much data is in my head. I know how to quote the top 10 authors verbatimly whenever I choose to. But to have an expression through wisdom means that you can memorize the data. You know that 2 + 2 = 4. You know what this author said and this author said, but you've taken data and then you've applied it to your life. You've applied it to your life experiences and maybe the experiences that you have witnessed from others to allow you to then make a shift, make a truly embodied, in mind shift in how you live your present and your future based on the knowledge that you've learned and how you've applied it to your life. And that allows us to have a deeper sense of connection to who we are, to how we live our life, and maybe even to why we live our life. And then we can begin to find a sense of peace. If we can find a sense of peace of who we are, we begin to allow ourselves to express versus perform. And I talked about this in a random Instagram post one time, and a friend of mine who is a performer was mildly upset. She's a dancer. I don't know, mildly upset. Yeah, that feels what she was. And I had to re-clarify myself. Performers are incredible human beings. TV shows, movies, plays, dancers, musicians, singers, all of them are amazing, and they are performers. But they are performing an art of expression. Now, there is a part of all these performances that are choreographed, whether the choreograph is these are what all the people are going to do dancing, whether the choreography is as an actor or a singer, this is what you're going to say, this is the song, this is the script. So there is a performance, but the truly great performers are expressing what they see as the role, which is one of the reasons why they say so few greats are out in the world anymore. Because in ballet is a great one. I love dancing. I watch cheesy dance movies all the time. And I was watching the Dance Academy, which is this horrible Australian show that appears to almost be like a reality show, but it's not. And it's based on these kids going to this ballet academy in Australia. I am so embarrassed for anybody that's listening to this that is Australian, that knows what I'm talking about, that is like, you dork. And yes, I am a dork. But when we look at dancing, the Zoe Zeldan movie, I think it was Center Stage is another example. When we look at ballet is precision. Precision is literally drilled and almost beat into ballerinas from the earliest ages. Everything has to be straight, these lines, these that. And then when you get through all of this, you have to be perfect, you have to be perfect, you have to be perfect. It has to look exactly like this. And then they go and audition. The ballerinas that get hired, the principal is the person that has this level of perfectionism, but is expressing themselves. They invoke emotion that comes through being vulnerable and pushing it through the edge. That same edge, that same personality, that expression that they're showing, some people might be like, you're doing it wrong. But then someone might see the true art form that comes through expression. So to express ourselves, even in a performance, is to allow ourselves to be connected with who we are, to have a sense of self, and to have such a sense of self that we can begin to mute out the supposed to's. The supposed to's that come through perfectionism and performance is like, what am I supposed to sound like? And what am I supposed to look like? So everybody that's looking at this performance will like me. And those performances, we are disconnected. We are disconnected from ourselves because we are trying or over trying to connect to an audience. To truly and most effectively and at its deepest sense express, we have to be in some state of an equilibrium. We have to allow our nervous system to be calmed. And when we calm our nervous system, we can then respond to the situation that's in front of us. And the situation that's in front of us could be giving a speech. It could be singing. It could be teaching a yoga class. It could be doing a play. It could be having a coffee with a friend. It could be giving a presentation at work. But when we allow ourselves to be in kind of this nervous system, mental, emotional equilibrium state, it allows us to silence those critics that we create in our head that are going to edit how we talk to try to please them. And it allows us to speak with our mind, our heart, and our gut in some level of alignment where we're not super heady, like, oh, what am I supposed to say? What am I supposed to look like? We're not rambling as we're just like, let me just my heart talk or my gut talk, but they all can work in some sort of homeostasis. Somehow they're all connected to allow us to express from a place of who we are and what we want to share. I used to do a lot of public speaking, especially when I was in the sales world, and I was great at it, and it sucked. I gave a presentation. I was working at a company called EMC, which is one of the most aggressive, toxic sales cultures on planet fucking Earth. And I'm also going to do a whole episode about how I've overcome like the shame, the perspective, and the negativity of that working environment. Freaking old 15 years later. But we had this pitch about this new software that we bought. It was deduplication. None of you might know what that is. It might sound boring. Simply put, if you have something on your computer that said all these photos are the exact same, we're going to shrink it so you only have one of those photos. That's basically what this did for corporations, all sorts of other stuff. But we had this little pitch and we had to learn it. And then we were like unknown of what we were going to do, but it was like the big pressure. Everybody know the deduplication pitch. And then our VP of North America at our sales kickoff, and I'm 1 month on the job. Our VP of North America on our sales kickoff starts going area by area. An area, there's only like 8 areas across, and he's like, everybody put $5 in a pot, maybe $10 in a pot, and then all of a sudden, no one knew what was going to happen. It was a competition, and everyone was going to give their pitch. And I remember on the plane ride over, I had it, and I just started looking at it, and I listened to it. I listened to this pitch like 20 times. And I'm sitting there in this room and I'm like, what happens when it comes to our area? Like, are you going to volunteer, Chris? And everybody's area vice president was picking a person, basically the person that they thought was the best salesperson in the room, or I most likely had seen them do the pitch before because they obviously want the bragging rights of area one. So it's going, and I'm having this anxiety because for the last 24 hours, basically, because I didn't know this was happening until 24 hours before, must have missed that email. I'm watching this video and I could close my eyes and visualize me giving this entire speech, knowing where the pauses were, where the essentially punchlines were, and I could deliver it flawlessly in my own mind. And then all of a sudden, my AVP comes up and I think he's going to pick a specific person. And he does that with the slight edit. This is a character. Jim Kavanaugh is a character of characters, an incredible leader, also was one of the more intimidating human beings I had ever met. So he basically says, when he stands up, and we are the Western area, and he tells our region, and we're all sitting out, spread out around the crowd, he's just like, does anybody have the balls to volunteer, or else I'm picking Mike Tornacasa? This was 15 years ago, and I remember it like it was yesterday. And I raise my hand, and everybody just looks at me. Here's the guy that's been on the job for 1 month, is the youngest person on his team by 5 years, and he just volunteered. And I go up there, and I crushed it. And I could not tell you to this day one word that I said because I did great, but I was in this giant anxiety filled adrenaline rush of delivering this thing perfectly. I put on an incredible performance, but I didn't express anything because I was so like disconnected from my body. I was like literally like zoomed out, like what the fuck? Like couldn't remember. I'd done stand-up comedy. It's stand-up comedy. You're literally, I'm trying to meditate backstage, remember what I'm going to say, and calm my goddamn nervous system. And somehow the stand-up comedy goes well. But there was always a disconnection between me and the audience where it could be good, but it was never going to be the best that it could be for me because of that disconnection, that anxiety and that stress and that feeling like I am putting a performance on for somebody else versus having this beautiful release of an expression that comes from me. I did a stand-up comedy bit, maybe one of the last ones that I've ever done, and I created a character. I created this character that was called Sage Soaring Eagle Rainmaker, and I had spent some time in Tulum and just saw the ridiculousness that was Tulum and already know the ridiculousness that is Ubud in Bali. And I just decided to create the most ridiculous spiritual character ever. And it was so funny. I gave we were at a rehearsal and I did it. And some of the people were like, that's not funny. And I was just like, I think this shit's fucking hilarious. And I thought and they're just like, oh, then the guy that runs it was like, Chris is more of like a game time performer. It's like, it'll always be better when he does it there. And all of a sudden I was just like, oh. So like I went over it again. And I remember in preparing for it, I was like the least nervous that I'd ever been because it felt so funny and so right that I didn't have to put effort into it. And when I gave this comedic bit, it was the best one that I've ever given because it was so natural. It was like there was a sense of this embodiment of this character. I knew this character. I created this character. I was confident in this character. And it was like full expression. And it was hilarious. It was so hilarious. I did it like a week later and evolved the character another one. And I just remember, oh, wow, to look at these two expressions, this comedy, but one being this worried, trying to impress performance versus like, I got this and I know this. And it was beautiful. Both were ultimately beautiful experiences, but I really began to see this power of expression when we allow ourselves to be connected to who we are and we can share from this beautiful connection of mind, heart, gut. We are present. And I think that is one of the most beautiful things is to truly be present. And when we show up and we are present and we share, we connect not just to everything that we are sharing, but it gives us the opportunity to connect to who we are sharing with. And I believe to my core that people feel people. So your authenticity and what you're sharing is the most beautifully connecting, almost borderline addicting thing that you can do. But it's scary because when we perform, there is a literal, metaphorical, or physical mask that we are putting on, and it protects us. Because if shit goes to shit, it's like, oh, they didn't like the character. We have this excuse. We have the way to kind of like back out, like, oh, it was something else. I didn't put the right character on. I didn't put the right mask on. I didn't put the right voice on, and that's why it worked. But when we are unconditionally us, there's no mask. We are doing the real, expressing us underneath the true us. And someone's like, they don't like it.